Nobody in Cleveland expected the first major meltdown of the season to come from someone who doesn't even wear a helmet. Yet that's exactly what happened. What should have been a quiet week for the Browns instantly turned into a storm of chaos, tension, and whispered conversations inside the locker room, all sparked by a 2-minute TikTok video. It wasn't a blown coverage, a late-game interception, or even a questionable coaching call. This time, the spotlight landed on someone completely outside the huddle, Dillon Gabriel's fiancée. And somehow, with one short caption and one even shorter comment reply, she managed to create the kind of distraction NFL teams desperately try to avoid. Front office executives started talking. Coaches grew frustrated. Teammates raised eyebrows. And a rookie quarterback already fighting for survival suddenly found himself buried under a wave of controversy he didn't create, but now has to answer for. The irony? Dillon Gabriel didn't throw a pick, didn't fumble, didn't blow a read. He wasn't even on the field. All it took was a fashion-themed "Get Ready With Me" TikTok, one of those harmless influencer videos you scroll past without thinking twice. But the moment she added a caption poking fun at the Browns' losing history, everything shifted. The clip spread fast. Fans reacted even faster. And what started as a simple outfit video suddenly became the most talked about Browns storyline of the week. But that was only the beginning. Because once the comments rolled in, and once she decided to fire back, the situation crossed a line that no NFL rookie wants to be associated with. And what happened next had the entire building talking. It's almost impossible to believe that something as simple as a "Get Ready With Me" video could send an NFL franchise into full damage control mode. But that's exactly how this entire situation began. No controversy, no argument, no hidden agenda, just a routine TikTok where Dillon Gabriel's fiancée filmed herself choosing an outfit for a Browns game. On the surface, it was the most harmless content imaginable. She laid out leggings, hoodies, bomber jackets, pricey denim, even a pair of hunter boots, while chatting casually with what looked like her mom. It was the kind of light, aesthetic video influencers post every day without a second thought. In any normal world, that's all it would have been. A 2-minute scroll-past moment that disappears into the TikTok void by dinner time. But this one didn't disappear. It detonated. Because tucked underneath that innocent video was a caption that instantly changed everything. Browns loss. What's new? 5 words. That's all it took to ignite one of the most unexpected storylines of the season. For a fan scrolling by, it looked like a casual jab. Just someone expressing frustration about a team known for heartbreak. But coming from the fiancé of a current Browns quarterback, that turned a simple caption into a full-blown problem. Suddenly, it wasn't just a joke. It wasn't just a comment. It was a public shot at the organization signing her future husband's checks. An organization already trying to evaluate whether Dillon Gabriel belongs in the league long-term. Fans saw it immediately. Reporters noticed. And inside the Browns facility, it didn't take long for whispers to start circulating. Why was a player's significant other mocking the team publicly? Why during a year the locker room was already under pressure? And why now, when Dillon himself was barely holding onto a roster spot? What should have been throwaway influencer content suddenly became the spark that lit the fuse. The video started gaining traction, and every new view brought another round of irritation, confusion, and anger. People weren't just talking about the caption. They were talking about what it implied. And as the clip spread, it was clear this wasn't going away on its own. Because the real explosion hadn't even happened yet. At first glance, those 5 words might seem harmless. A frustrated comment plenty of fans make every Sunday. But inside an NFL building, context is everything. And the context around Dillon Gabriel is exactly why that tiny caption hit the Browns like a sledgehammer. Dillon isn't a superstar with job security. He isn't a franchise cornerstone who can weather any storm. He's a rookie backup quarterback fighting for his professional life. A player who already used up his small window of opportunity with 5 starts that didn't convince the coaching staff he was ready to lead the team. In situations like that, perception matters almost as much as performance. Every action, every headline, every whisper becomes part of the evaluation. So when his fiancée publicly mocked the team's losing history, it didn't land like a casual joke. It landed like a warning sign. A sign that the people closest to him might not fully grasp how fragile his position is. A sign that unnecessary drama could follow him into the building. A sign that the Browns might end up managing off-field noise instead of developing a young quarterback. And that's exactly what coaches dread. Inside any NFL organization, especially one with the Browns' history, leaders want players who minimize distractions, not create them. Fair or not, teams pay close attention to every external voice around a borderline roster player. They ask themselves, is this going to be a pattern? Is this someone who's going to add stress to the locker room instead of relief? That caption didn't just irritate fans. It created questions. Questions about Dillon's judgment. Questions about whether he could keep the focus where it belonged. Questions about whether he might bring unwanted energy into a locker room already navigating a quarterback change. And fans weren't the only ones reacting. According to people around the league, the clip had already made its way into conversations among scouts, analysts, and even a few executives. Because when you're on the bubble in the NFL, your margin for error is razor thin, sometimes thinner. The caption alone could have faded away in a day, but the moment Dillon Gabriel's fiancée decided to respond to a critical comment, that's when this story went from uncomfortable to explosive. If the story had ended with that caption, the Browns might have weathered the moment with nothing more than a few annoyed side comments in the building. But that's not what happened. The real chaos started when the TikTok began circulating, pulling in reactions from fans who felt the caption crossed a line. And among those comments was one from a user named Leon James, a message that wasn't just harsh, but clearly meant to provoke. He accused her of being out of touch, took personal shots at Dillon, and claimed evidence that nobody in the locker room respected him. It was the kind of over-the-top internet rant that anyone with social media experience instantly recognizes as bait. Troll behavior designed to spark a fight. And instead of letting it die, she took the bait. She fired back with a response that seemed defensive on the surface, but ended up being the most damaging part of the entire ordeal. Actually, everyone in the building wants him to play. That one line blew the situation wide open. Suddenly, this wasn't just an annoyed fiancé venting online. She was now speaking for the entire Browns organization, implying she knew what coaches, executives, and players were privately saying behind closed doors. To people inside the league, that's a massive red flag. It suggests overconfidence, access she doesn't have, and assumptions that can fracture trust inside a team. And it didn't stop there. By claiming everyone wanted Dillon to start, she unintentionally suggested the coaches were ignoring the locker room's wishes. To outsiders, it sounded like a direct shot at the staff's decision-making, basically implying Shedeur Sanders wasn't the rightful starter. Even though that likely wasn't her intention, the interpretation spread fast. Fans reposted screenshots, analysts chimed in. And inside the Browns facility, people started asking the kind of uncomfortable questions no rookie quarterback wants attached to his name. Her attempt to defend Dillon didn't fix anything. It magnified everything. Instead of being a non-story, it became a narrative. Instead of fading away, it became fuel for every debate show looking for controversy. And instead of protecting her fiancé, she backed him into a corner where every move he made would now be viewed through the lens of this online feud. And unfortunately for Dillon Gabriel, this was only the beginning of the fallout. Inside an NFL building, words carry weight, even when they're typed by someone who never steps onto the field. And the moment Dillon Gabriel's fiancée claimed everyone in the building wanted him to play, the reaction wasn't anger so much as disbelief. Because to coaches, players, and front office staff, that line didn't sound like a defense. It sounded like a problem. First, she positioned herself as if she had inside access to conversations she was never part of. In a league built on hierarchy, confidentiality, and respect for the process, that's a serious breach of unspoken rules. Coaches spend countless hours evaluating players, debating depth charts, and analyzing every practice rep. For someone outside that world to suggest they were ignoring the true will of the locker room, that's the kind of implication that instantly rubs people the wrong way. Second, her comment unintentionally questioned the decision to start Shedeur Sanders. Even if she didn't mean it as a shot, it landed like one. It implied the staff made the wrong call, that his teammates preferred a different quarterback, and that something behind the scenes wasn't aligned. In a locker room where unity matters more than anything, that type of narrative can fracture relationships, especially when it comes from someone who isn't even on the roster. And then there's the biggest issue of all, professionalism. NFL veterans watch everything. They see how younger players handle adversity, criticism, and outside noise. They notice who takes ownership and who lets drama swirl around them. When a rookie's family member starts generating headlines and pulling the team into an online argument, players don't just question the fiancé. They question the quarterback connected to her. Is he focused? Is he mature enough? Will this kind of distraction follow him wherever he goes? Those questions linger far longer than any TikTok comment section. By the time her reply gained traction, the damage was already done. What should have been a forgettable social media exchange now forced Dillon to navigate awkward conversations with teammates, coaches, and even front office staff who suddenly needed reassurance that he wasn't part of the narrative she created. And unfortunately for him, the ripple effect inside the building was only growing stronger. Because what happened next pushed this situation from uncomfortable to potentially career-altering. Inside an NFL building, distractions don't just disappear. They attach themselves to the people involved. And in this case, the fallout from a single TikTok comment spread through the Browns facility faster than anyone expected. Coaches noticed the noise immediately, not because they wanted to, but because every reporter, every fan debate, every social clip suddenly had Dillon Gabriel's name attached to controversy he didn't even create. And in a league where reputations form quickly, that kind of association is dangerous. Front office staff began discussing the situation not from an emotional standpoint, but a professional one. Teams evaluate players through a wide lens: talent, maturity, resilience, and how they respond when adversity hits. When a rookie backup is suddenly tied to public criticism of the franchise, executives start wondering whether this is a one-time flare-up or a preview of future headaches. Rumors around the league suggested some scouts were already labeling it a red flag. Not because Dillon himself did anything wrong, but because drama tends to follow the people closest to you. Meanwhile, the locker room dynamic quietly shifted. Players won't always say it out loud, but they judge how a young quarterback handles pressure. They watch whether he keeps the team first or lets outside noise seep in. Even if teammates didn't blame Dillon for what happened, they couldn't ignore that the distraction came from his circle. Veterans, especially, have seen careers derailed by far less. And then there's the quarterback room, a space built on trust and stability. When one quarterback's family member publicly questions organizational decisions, even indirectly, it creates tension that nobody wants. Shedeur Sanders, who earned the starting job with his preparation and professionalism, was now being dragged into a narrative he never asked for. Coaches had to address the chatter. Teammates exchanged glances. The focus shifted from football to fallout. For Dillon, this was the worst-case scenario. He needed clean tape, quiet weeks, and a steady presence to rebuild trust with the staff. Instead, he was walking into meetings overshadowed by headlines he couldn't escape. Every conversation now carried an undertone. Can he move past this? And more importantly, can the team? The unfortunate truth was becoming clear. The ripple effect wasn't slowing down. It was gaining momentum. If there's one thing NFL careers don't offer, it's extra time. And for Dillon Gabriel, the timing of this entire meltdown couldn't have been more brutal. This is the stage of a young quarterback's career where every rep matters, every evaluation shapes the future, and every impression, good or bad, sticks with a coaching staff for far longer than fans realize. Fringe players don't have the luxury of outside noise, and Dillon was already walking a razor-thin line before the TikTok ever hit the internet. This was supposed to be his window to prove he belonged. He'd already received 5 starts, 5 chances most rookies never get, to convince the Browns he could grow into something more. Instead, the results were mixed, and the team shifted towards Shedeur Sanders, who took full advantage of his opportunity and earned the starting job through steady play and composure under pressure. That transition alone put Dillon in a tough spot. He needed the rest of the season to rebuild confidence, show growth, and convince the organization he was worth developing. But that mission became nearly impossible the moment his fiancée's posts became national talking points. While Shedeur's rise was defined by discipline and silence, Dillon's narrative became tangled with drama, questions about focus, and speculation about internal tension. And none of that had anything to do with his arm strength or ability to read a defense. It was simply bad timing. A personal storm arriving during the most fragile stretch of his professional life. Worse yet, NFL teams pay close attention to how rookies handle adversity. Do they stay composed? Do they communicate? Do they block out distractions? Every scout and every evaluator watches for those traits because they're often better indicators of longevity than any stat line. Instead of demonstrating the clean, distraction-free profile teams love in a developmental quarterback, Dillon was suddenly tagged with baggage he never intended to carry. And the timing made it impossible to ignore. Not in meetings, not in the quarterback room, not in conversations about the roster moving forward. All of this arrived at the exact moment Dillon needed stability the most, and the league rarely offers second chances to players viewed as complicated. The unfortunate truth was setting in. This wasn't just a bad look. It was a threat to his entire future. What made this entire situation even more uncomfortable inside the Browns organization was the glaring contrast between Dillon Gabriel and the quarterback who replaced him. While Dillon found himself pulled into a storm he never created, Shedeur Sanders was quietly doing everything a franchise wants from a young leader. He stayed off social media. He avoided unnecessary headlines. He focused entirely on football, letting his performance, and only his performance, shape the story around him. That difference didn't go unnoticed. Shedeur entered the league with more pressure and attention than most rookies ever face. Being the son of Deion Sanders means every move is scrutinized, every mistake is magnified, and every success becomes a national discussion. Yet despite all that noise, he kept a steady, composed presence. No cryptic posts, no emotional reactions, no indirect shots at teammates or coaches. Just work, preparation, and a calm demeanor that resonated with the staff. And while Shedeur climbed the depth chart through consistency, Dillon's narrative shifted for reasons that had nothing to do with football. Inside the building, the contrast became a quiet conversation. On one side, a young quarterback handling pressure with poise. On the other, a rookie suddenly surrounded by tension, headlines, and questions about what kind of energy he might bring into the locker room. Reports around the league suggested this contrast was already affecting perception. Scouts love players who eliminate distractions, who make a team's life easier, not harder. Fair or not, Dillon was suddenly seen as a player whose environment could introduce complications. Shedeur, meanwhile, was being praised for the exact opposite. His maturity, his discipline, his ability to operate under the spotlight without letting it spill into the team. Even players felt the difference. Teammates gravitated toward the quarterback who kept things simple and focused. And in the NFL, where locker room trust is everything, that kind of contrast matters more than most fans realize. Dillon wasn't just battling Shedeur for a starting job anymore. He was battling a narrative, one that painted Shedeur as the stable choice and Dillon as the risk. And once that comparison took hold inside the building, the consequences became almost impossible to escape. The question now wasn't whether the Browns noticed the difference. It was whether Dillon could overcome it before the damage became permanent. In the end, what makes this entire situation so unbelievable isn't just how quickly it spiraled, it's how avoidable it all was. A rookie quarterback trying to survive in the most competitive league on the planet needed nothing more than a quiet season, steady improvement, and a clean profile. Instead, he found himself standing in the center of a storm built from 5 words, one defensive reply, and a social media chain reaction that never should have involved him in the first place. The Browns didn't create this drama. His teammates didn't spark it. Coaches didn't fan the flames. Yet they all ended up dealing with the consequences of a moment that should have never existed. Suddenly, meetings had a different tone. Conversations carried extra weight. And every evaluation of Dillon Gabriel, from the training staff to the front office, now came with a silent add-on. Can he separate himself from the noise around him? Because in the NFL, fair or not, you're judged not only by what you do, but by what follows you. Meanwhile, Shedeur Sanders kept stacking clean weeks, quiet headlines, and focused preparation. In a world obsessed with narratives, he offered none, just stability. And that, more than anything, made the situation around Dillon feel even heavier. One quarterback showcased professional calm. The other was dragged into chaos he never directly caused, yet couldn't fully escape. As league insiders continued discussing the fallout, a bigger truth hovered over the entire story. Reputations form fast in the NFL, and they're incredibly hard to change once they stick. Dillon needed time, space, and opportunity to re-establish who he is as a player and teammate. Instead, he walked into a storyline that overshadowed every part of his work. What happens next may ultimately define his career. Does he rebound, prove his professionalism, and convince the Browns, or another team, that the noise was a fluke? Or does this moment become the turning point that quietly closes doors before he ever gets the chance to reopen them? For a player on the edge of the NFL, the margin between opportunity and obscurity is razor thin. And all it took was a single TikTok video to push Dillon Gabriel dangerously close to that edge.